Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So the story today is a story I already spoke about in the past and I wrote about it. And it's one of those experiences that I'm used to like most when talking to people, trying to explain what life is or what life might be, or at least making people thinking of what actually life might be. So I was talking with this person, with this girl. She just broke up with her boyfriend, and she lost her job as well. So she was really sad. And we started to talk, and I tried to explain that, life is a journey, and we learn from those experiences, and once a door closes, another open. So I was trying to explain that to see life differently than what she been taught to see, because life might be much more than what she believes. And normally when I talk to people and I try to make my point, obviously this is again based on all the situation experiences that happened to me. There is like one that for me obviously been very important, and I normally start always telling that story before moving on more. And I already talked about it many times and wrote about it, and I wrote something about it again. And that's when I moved to Australia. So everything's is how can I say, it's like there is checkpoints, and every checkpoint will take you to a certain situation and to a certain event, and then it's all connected. Like famous interview to Steve Jobs: if you want to understand your present life, look backward and connect all the dots, and you will realize how did you get there. And same for me, for meeting an important person that changed the course of my life. But before meeting that person, like in another interview to Brian Eno, when was asked what was the most important episode that got you where you are, and he made an amazing point. I could say, oh, when I met this person, but before I met this person, the way I met this person is because I met this person before at the university 5 years earlier. But before that, it's because I met another person that told me to go to that university. But if I had to think about it, what was the most important point? Maybe was when he said I was partying. I think it was Woodstock Festival, and he met very cool people that were studying arts, and that's why he chose arts. And so he made a really good point. If we think, yes, okay, when I met that person or when that event took place, yes, that was really important. But before that, I met this other person that then led me to that event. So that person was actually an important point, important moments. But before meeting that person, if I didn't choose to go to that country, I would have met that person. That was not important. So every decision, every choice we make, and every person we met is like the most important event that will lead to the next event. So in my case, and was the reason that led me to go to Bundaberg in Queensland in Australia, and to go to a hostel, and this hostel to meet this girl. And then things took a different direction. But before that, like I would say, obviously I can go backward to probably the day I was born, but I would say like I would probably put like I use as a very important checkpoints when I met this guy in Madrid. Is a schoolmate from high school that I barely met in town. We live in neighboring towns. We don't live in the same town, but after high school, I barely met him. And I met him one day in Madrid, in Spain, for New Year Eve. It was in the same place I was. And he saw me, recognized me, called my name. So, as I many times when I mentioned this story, we can, like that time, it was for me that I wasn't aware yet about how my own universe works. I was obviously surprised, and I call it coincidence. It was like, wow, it's a coincidence. I met this guy in Madrid, and for New Year Eve, and miles away from Italy. But then, when 1 year later, I met him again, New Year Eve period, in Amsterdam. I just came out from the station at the time, heading to the hostel, and I was, for some reason, decided I look on my right side across the road. I feel like I just felt it, something, like obviously something wanted me, something wanted me to look to the other side, where this guy that actually carried my same name, Alessandro, was with his friends. So now, calling coincidences was becoming a little bit trickier. But things took even a bigger direction. And obviously what made me questioning, the beginning of make me questioning this existence we call life, was when like I think it was 6-7 months before leaving to Australia, I met this guy again. Well, like I met in town this time, but I didn't see him for a really long time. And I remember making a joke because I met him in town, and I remember making a joke and say, "Oh, I was in Lisbon for New Year Eve, and I thought I would meet you there, but I didn't." And he was like, "What? I was looking for you because somehow our life came across again, because he was in Australia for 1 year, and he ended up working for an Italian farmer. And this Italian farmer, chit-chatting, happened to be an uncle that I didn't know to have in Australia. They were talking, and when he asked him where he was from, he said, "Oh, I'm from Grotte Mare, but I studied in San Benedetto." "Oh yeah, no, I have my cousin's son is from there. His name is Alessandro Carosi." And then obviously it was like, "Oh, I know him. We went to school together." I don't know if he mentioned the fact that we met in Madrid and 1 year later we met in Amsterdam, but our life came across, and finding out about this uncle that I didn't know, and that apparently was actually one of the closest person to my father, and actually he resembled basically like my father. He looks alike so much. That's the reason why I choose to go to Bundaberg, and actually made even stronger to want to go to Australia. But the reason I choose Bundaberg in Queensland was for him, for this uncle. And again, another checkpoint. If he lived in the middle of nowhere, so he placed me in a hostel, they would take me to farms, and they would pick me back. They would then pick us back home to the hostel, and they would take me to my uncle farm as well. So because he chose this hostel for me, that's where I met this girl. And this girl then turns out to be a really important change, a very good change. So I mentioned this story many times, as many other stories that I talk about many more times, because for me are a symbol of how there is not such a thing as coincidences, and at least not in my journey. So there is no such a thing as a coincidences, and everything is connected. Everything's happen for a reason. So the reason may be that our desire, our imagination that create our reality, our emotions that create our reality, make a way that situation like this happens, so that we can reach our goals. I always say that I call it synchronicities was basically funded by so the name synchronicity was created the word by Carl Jung, that at the time he was very aware about the fact that there was no such a thing as coincidences, and he coined this term to refer to these events that are not coincidences. So they call it a synchronicities. So because they are synchronized, they happen perfectly in a way that you can't explain it. So obviously, when you experience certain things like in this case, you can't look at life any longer as it used to be, except that you're forcing yourself to find the reason, so that to stay in the matrix. Because once you started to try to understand this mystery that we call life becomes harder. Somehow it becomes better, because you are not constrained to a lot of rules that this matrix created for us. But it becomes harder because you start and then to see like the society we live in, and the life you are living in differently than how it used to be. So initially it's painful, and then the journey can become hard, because then you find yourself, there is many like us, but you will find yourself one of the few to see life in a different way and want the life in a different way than the majority. That in the movie The Matrix, they say they are in the Matrix, still in the Matrix, and they will see you as something different, someone different. Most of the time when you came out from the Matrix, because you start to see life for what it is, a huge acting stage, most of the time you start to want just love for everyone. You start to lose interest for materialistic achievements. All you want is that everybody can go through this mystery happier. So the ego slowly start to dissolve, and all you want is unified happiness and joy for everyone involved. So, and this path is a path that, you will be few against many. So you won't have the majority of people sharing those value, because you will be wanting a better world, but you will find yourself surrounded by an ego-based society that can become very hard to navigate. So to get back to that event. So that event, when you experience something like this, you don't see life anymore for what it is, as I said. You know, you meet the same person, obviously is playing a bigger role in this story. Madrid, Amsterdam, then he went to work for your uncle, and then you go to work for your uncle, and then you met an important woman. So that was the point I was trying to explain to this girl. Everything that happen can be seen as a suffering, or can be seen as a lessons to learn and become a better person. Because love will be back again, opportunity will be back again, and everything we need will come to us. Anything that match what we became. And to be able to do that, you need to close the door behind so that you can open the new one in front of you. And that can be achieved only understanding that what happened, boyfriend, breakup, lost job, is just lessons. It's just lessons. And leave it behind and keep living in the present moment, living every second in the present, so that your frequency, your energy is high. And that's when you're able to go through the new door, the new open door, and the new opportunity. Because holding to something that causes pain means keep your energy, vibrations, frequency lower. And that's when we are unable to see the new door opening. There is a story that was a beautiful name. I just remembered now. A while ago, I was reading a story about a near-death experience about this guy. I think it was 1917 that died during the First World War, and he could not accept that he was dead. He could not accept that he left behind his human existence, and that suffering for not accepting his own death, it kept him in a sort of limbo where he felt alone. He could not see anything. There was nothing except him. Until the point where he finally accept the fact that his body is dead, and he needs to move on. And this basically change in frequency makes slowly dissipate some sort of like fog around him, and he realized that actually all the time was surrounded by other entity like him. They could not see because it was sad. It was the grief, the pain, the sadness of being gone, of being dead, was basically holding him back. And once he accepted that, and his frequency start to become stronger, he start to see that and realize that there was a lot of people around him, a lot of their souls. And the same things works as in our human body. Once we keep the frequency higher, when we keep the frequency higher, we start to really see things changing. Things we want comes to us easily. The right people comes to us easily, and so on. But there is no other way than accepting whatever happening or happened to you and raise your frequency, raising up your frequency. All right. I will talk to you soon. Actually, I discovered something yesterday that I want to show you. I want to make it in another video. All right. Have a nice day, everyone. Mwah. Ciao.